From Keene in the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Daryl W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for Wednesday, January 14th, 2015. Silver is trading at $16.83 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,233 per ounce. And according to BitcoinAverage.com, the average price of Bitcoin is $193. Antiwar.com reports 12 civilians were killed and an unknown number of others were wounded between the town of Volnokova and Mariupol in southeastern Ukraine when a stray artillery shell hit a passenger bus. The Ukrainian government and eastern rebels traded blame for the incident, with the military saying they believe the rebels were trying to hit a military roadblock down the road. A ceasefire has prevailed over much of eastern Ukraine for months, but the OSCE warned that the situation is deteriorating in the past 24 hours, in particular with fighting near the Donetsk airport. The Ukrainian military has held the airport throughout this civil war, but the city itself is the capital of the rebel region. Many of the fights have centered around this region, though the airport is virtually destroyed at this point. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. Reuters reports Oklahoma this week plans to conduct its first execution since a faulty lethal injection last April led to UN criticism and prompted President Barack Obama to seek a re-examination of how capital punishment is implemented in the United States. The state is set to execute convicted child rapist and murderer Charles Warner on Thursday after spending months revising its protocol for the death chamber to prevent the shortcomings with the last execution. Lawyers for death row inmates said even with the new protocols, the state execution process remains deeply flawed. They are seeking a court-ordered halt on the grounds that Oklahoma's process could violate constitutional protections against cruel and unusual punishment. Del Bates, one of the attorneys representing Oklahoma death row inmates, said, "We will ask the U.S. Supreme Court to prevent the scheduled executions from going forward due to the substantial risk of harm." On Monday, the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals denied a motion to halt the execution, saying the new protocols and lethal drug combination for the state were appropriate. The new protocols require additional training of execution doctors, paramedics, and prison staff. There are procedures for backup drugs and allowing the prison director to request a postponement if the execution team has an hour of unsuccessful IV attempts. For over 35 years, Robertson Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and permanently removed the minimum purchase order for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Robertson Roberts today for knowledgeable advice on investing and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 850-478-5270 or online at rrbi.co. Wired reports, for the past year, the FBI and federal prosecutors have told and retold the story of how Ross Ulbricht created, owned, and operated the massive anonymous online drug empire known as the Silk Road. But as his trial began Tuesday, Ulbricht's defense lawyer for the first time told their own version of that story, and while theirs also begins with Ulbricht creating the Silk Road, it ends with Ulbricht being framed by the real operators of the site to whom he handed down control. In his opening statement in a Manhattan courtroom, defense attorney Joshua Draytel began with the surprising admission that his client, Ross Ulbricht, was in fact the founder of the Silk Road. But Draytel went on to explain that the site was meant to merely be a kind of economic experiment that Ulbricht only controlled for a brief time. The eventual adoptive owners of the Silk Road, Draytel claimed, would later trick Ulbricht into serving as the fall guy when they sensed an impending law enforcement crackdown. The Daily Mail adds about a dozen protesters stood in front of the courthouse for part of the day with signs and jury nullification flyers in support of Ulbricht. After the trial finished for the day, Judge Catherine Forrest said she would consider making the jury anonymous if the protest persisted. This has been FPP Radio News, online at fppradio.com.